It's time now for us to enjoy the poem of Hiawatha and learn how he grows from a little baby to eventually the leader of his people, and how he learns all about the nature all around where he lives. I'm going to read it all to you now, and what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to enjoy listening to it, but also looking at the beautiful illustrations that have been created by Susan Jeffers. Some of the language and some of the ideas are quite unusual and a little bit tricky. But over the next few days, we're going to break the poem down into small sections where we'll be able to think a little bit more closely about all of the ideas and the vocabulary. So I'm going to share my screen with you now so that you can see the pictures really closely. And the blurb told us that often this poem is sung because there are certain rhythms that you'll be able to hear. Look carefully at the illustrations to help you find out what's going on and listen to the words as I read this poem to you. By the shores of Gitche Gummy, by the shining big sea water, stood the wigwam of Nokomis, daughter of the moon, Nokomis. Dark behind it rose the forest, rose the black and gloomy pine trees, rose the firs with cones upon them. Bright before it beat the water, beat the clear and sunny water, beats the shining big sea water. There the wrinkled old Nokomis nursed the little Hiawatha, rocked him in his linden cradle, bedded soft in moss and rushes, safely bound with reindeer sinews, stilled his fretful wail by saying, "Hush, the naked bear will hear thee," lulled him into slumber singing, "Ewa-yea, my little owlet, who is this that lights the wigwam? With his great eyes lights the wigwam. Ewa-yea, my little owlet." Many things Nokomis taught him of the stars that shine in heaven, showed him Ishkuda, the comet, Ishkuda with fiery tresses, showed the death dance of the spirits, warriors with their plumes and war clubs, flaring far away to northward in the frosty nights of winter, showed the broad white road in heaven, pathway of the ghosts, the shadows, running straight across the heavens, crowded with the ghosts, the shadows. At the door on summer evenings sat the little Hiawatha, heard the whispering of the pine trees, heard the lapping of the waters, sounds of music, words of wonder. "Mini-wah-wah," said the pine trees. "Mutwa-ashku," said the water. Saw the firefly, Wawa-tasy, flitting through the dusk of evening with the twinkle of its candle, lighting up the brakes and bushes, and he sang the song of children, sang the song Nokomis taught him. Wawa-tasy, little firefly, little flitting white fire insect, little dancing white fire creature, light me with your little candle, here upon my bed I lay me, here in sleep I close my eyelids." saw the moon rise from the water, rippling, rounding from the water, saw the flecks and shadows on it, whispered, "What is that, Nokomis?" And the good Nokomis answered, "Once a warrior, very angry, seized his grandmother and threw her up into the sky at midnight. Right against the moon he threw her. 'Tis is her body that you see there." Saw the rainbow in the heaven, in the eastern sky the rainbow, whispered, "What is that, Nokomis?" And the good Nokomis answered, "'Tis the heaven of flowers you see there, all the wild flowers of the forest, all the lilies of the prairies. When on earth they fade and perish, blossom in that heaven above us." And there you can see little Hiawatha, no longer a baby, but now a small child. When he heard the owls at midnight, hooting, laughing in the forest, "What is that?" he cried in terror. "What is that?" he said. "Nokomis?" And the good Nokomis answered, "That is but the owl and owlet, talking in their native language, talking, scolding at each other." Then the little Hiawatha learned of every bird its language, learned their names and all their secrets, how they built their nests in summer, where they hid themselves in winter, talked with them whene'er he met them, called them Hiawatha's chickens. Of all the beasts he learned the language, learned their names and all their secrets, how the beavers built their lodges, where the squirrels hid their acorns, how the reindeer ran so swiftly, why the rabbit was so timid. Talked with them whene'er he met them, called them Hiawatha's brothers. And that is the poem all about Hiawatha, how he learned to understand the world around him, and how old Nokomis taught him everything that he needed to know. On a separate Parent App post today, I've sent you the next part of the poem, leading from where you read yesterday. What I'd like you to do, I'd like you to read the first 2 pages to yourself now. If there's a grown-up that can help you, talk to them about any tricky words or ideas, and then afterwards we can read it together and I will talk to you about the tricky vocabulary that's being used. So pause the video now and read the next 2 pages. How did you get on? It's time for us to read it together now. Saw the moon rise from the water, rippling, rounding from the water. Saw the flecks and shadows on it, whispered, "What is that, Nokomis?" And the good Nokomis answered, "Once a warrior, very angry, seized his grandmother and threw her up into the sky at midnight. Right against the moon he threw her. 'Tis her body that you see there." If you look at the picture, you can certainly see a body in the moon. A couple of words I'm going to talk to you about just to check that you're understanding everything that you're reading. Let's have a little think about what they told us about the water. Hiawatha saw flecks and shadows on it. We know what shadows are, but what about flecks? What did you think, or what do you think flecks are? Look at the illustration, it might help you. I can certainly see the shadows in the water. Flecks are little bits of colour or light that are on the water. I can see flecks showing the stars, and I can see other little flecks and little lines that show the ripples of the water as well. And the other word that I'm just going to help you with is a verb. Something that happened to his grandmother. Can you find it? It's what the warrior did to the grandmother. He seized his grandmother. What do you think that might mean? If you're not sure, let's read around the sentence. Once a warrior, very angry, seized his grandmother and threw her up into the sky. So this warrior is angry, does something to his grandmother, which means he can then throw her into the sky. Have you had a think? Seize means when you capture or grab somebody. So that is what the warrior has done. Let's move on to the second page that you've read. Saw the rainbow in the heaven. In the eastern sky, the rainbow. Whispered, what is that, Nokomis? And the good Nokomis answered, 'Tis the heaven of flowers you see there, all the wild flowers of the forest, all the lilies of the prairie, when on earth they fade and perish, blossom in that heaven above us. There might be a word that you've spotted that is repeated. It's here at the start of the dialogue. It's the word 'tis. And if you look before the t, there is an apostrophe. And that's because 'tis is short for it is. And they've taken the I away, and they've shown us that they've done that by using that apostrophe. 'Tis the heaven of flowers. It is the heaven of flowers. I get a lovely image in my head when they're talking about flowers and wild flowers. Lilies are a type of flower. It says lilies of the prairie. Do you know what a prairie is? You find prairies in many areas in North America. A prairie is a very large and open and vast grassland. You get lots of long grasses in a prairie, and that's where the lilies are growing. If we look at the final two lines, when on earth they fade and perish. So what do you think is happening to the lilies if they're fading and they're perishing? That's right, the plants are dying. And then saying that the blossom goes into heaven that you can see in the illustration. What I'd like you to do now is to pause the video, look at your home learning sheet, because there are 3 questions that you're going to answer linked to the 2 parts of the poem that we've just read together. How did you get on with those questions? I wonder which verse you said was your favourite, and I wonder why it was. Your next task was to read up to the end of the poem. We're going to read it together again now, and then you've got some more activities to do about the ending. I'm going to share my screen with you so that we can read it together. Here we are. Okay, sit up nice and smartly so that we're ready to do some good reading together. When he heard the owls at midnight, hooting, laughing in the forest, "What is that?" he cried in terror. "What is that?" he said. "Nokomis?" And the good Nokomis answered, "That is but the owl and owlet, talking in their native language, talking, scolding at each other." Oh, I wonder what that means if they were scolding at each other. Well, if somebody scolds you, it normally means that you're being told off. I wonder who was telling who off, the owl or the owlet. Then the little Hiawatha learned of every bird its language, learned their names and all their secrets, how they built their nests in summer, where they hid themselves in winter, talked with them whene'er he met them, called them Hiawatha's chickens. Let's just have a quick look at this word here in the penultimate line. Talked with them whene'er he met them. This is a contracted word for whenever. They've taken the V out and they've replaced it with the apostrophe. Sometimes they do that just to help us say the words a little bit more quickly to fit in with perhaps a rhythm or a rhyme. Let's find out what happened next. All the beasts he learned the language, learned their names and all their secrets. How the beavers built their lodges, where the squirrels hid their acorns. How the reindeer ran so swiftly, why the rabbit was so timid. Talked to them whene'er he met them. Can you think of another word for timid? Have a think about what wild rabbits do as soon as they hear a human. Timid means very, very shy. And this is the final page. And it says Hiawatha called those animals, he called them Hiawatha's brothers. So we've come to the end of the poem again, and in your home learning it asks you some more questions and asks you to do a few more things to show that you've got a good understanding of the poem. The last activity I ask you to do, I ask you to come up with 2 of your own phrases that could belong in this poem. Work hard, think carefully, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye, everybody.